Have you ever wondered why some people feel the presence of God so deeply, so intimately, while others spend their entire lives searching, yet never truly find what their soul is longing for? Have you ever felt that invisible pull, that quiet call, as if something beyond this world was trying to reach you? Something ancient, something divine, something that whispers, not to your ears, but to the deepest chamber of your soul. Tonight, we step into a mystery older than scripture, older than temples, older even than the first breath of humanity. A mystery that the wise ones tried to protect, and the prophets tried to translate, but only a few souls were ever ready to hear. A mystery that speaks of 7 divine teachings, 7 hidden pathways that open the heart, the mind, and the soul to the presence of God. Edgar Cayce once hinted that God is not distant. God is not silent. God is not hiding behind clouds, galaxies, or unreachable heavens. Instead, he warned, the divine is always speaking. It is we who have forgotten how to listen. But what does this truly mean? Is it possible that God has been closer to us than our own breath, yet we walk through life feeling spiritually thirsty, emotionally empty, and painfully disconnected? Imagine, just for a moment, that the walls between you and the divine were never real. Imagine that the separation you feel was only a shadow, a veil created by fear, noise, wounds, and the burdens of living in a world that has forgotten its own sacred origin. Imagine that the same light that shaped galaxies also lives inside your chest, quietly waiting to be awakened. But the answer may not be what you think, because connecting with God is not a single moment, a single prayer, or a single ritual. It is a journey, a sacred unfolding, built on 7 teachings that most people ignore, misunderstand, or never discover in their lifetime. Tonight, we explore these teachings, not through the lens of religion, not through dogma, but through the timeless truth that speaks to every soul, in every age, in every corner of this living universe. The truth may be more mysterious than we ever imagined. So take a breath. Let your spirit settle, and let us begin this journey into the 7 divine teachings that reconnect us with the God who never left. To understand these 7 divine teachings, we must first step back and look at the larger spiritual landscape that surrounds us. Because the journey toward God does not begin with a teaching, it begins with a realization, a quiet awakening deep within the soul that whispers, there is more, far more than what the eyes can see. Humanity has searched for God for thousands of years. From ancient temples carved in stone, to desert prophets walking alone in silence, to mystics who retreated into caves, forests, and deep meditation, the question has always been the same. How do we truly connect with God? And yet, the answer has never belonged to just one path, one religion, or one tradition. Throughout history, spiritual figures like Allan Kardec, Rumi, Saint Teresa, the Sufis, and even Edgar Cayce tried to remind humanity of a beautiful truth. The connection with God is not found outside, it is awakened from within. Cayce himself often hinted that the divine realm is not a distant kingdom, but a living presence that moves through intuition, conscience, dreams, synchronicities, and the subtle rhythms of life. But most people, lost in survival, fear, noise, and distraction, forget how to sense that presence. They forget the language of the soul. So why has this topic become so important in our time? Because never in history have human beings been more overwhelmed, more disconnected, more spiritually starved. We live in a world overflowing with information, yet empty of inner meaning. We have mastered technology, yet forgotten how to hear our own hearts. We chase success, attention, validation, while the soul quietly whispers, I am still here, waiting to be remembered. People today are searching for something real, something authentic, something that brings peace not just to the mind, but to the spirit. They are longing for a God who feels present, loving, not distant or unreachable. And in this longing, something ancient is awakening again. A calling, a remembrance, a return. This is why the 7 divine teachings matter, because they do not belong to any one faith or culture. They belong to the human spirit itself. They guide us back to the place where God has always been, quietly waiting to be recognized. Take a moment. Let your heart soften. For the path is unfolding, and the first layer of this spiritual journey is about to begin. To step into the first spiritual layer, we must slow down. We must breathe differently. We must listen not with the ears, but with the quiet awareness behind the heartbeat. Because the first divine teaching is not something you learn, it is something you remember. Something your soul has always known, long before you entered this world of form and forgetfulness. The first teaching is this: God can only be found where silence is allowed to speak. Think about that for a moment. In a world filled with constant noise, notifications, responsibilities, expectations, fears, silence has become almost unfamiliar. We avoid it. We fear it. We fill it with anything that can distract us from the uncomfortable truth that lies just beneath the surface, that we have forgotten the language of the soul. But what does this truly mean? It means that the first step to connecting with God is to step out of the noise and step into the stillness. Because God does not shout. God does not force. God whispers gently, lovingly, patiently. And those whispers can only be heard when the world becomes quiet enough for the heart to notice. Imagine a candle in a storm. The flame dances, but it cannot speak. Only when the wind calms does the flame settle and its light becomes steady. Your soul works the same way. Many sages once said that silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of God. And it is in this sacred stillness that the first layer of spiritual awakening begins. The mind stops running. The heart stops tightening. The spirit begins to breathe again. Let's go deeper. Picture yourself standing alone at night, beneath a sky full of stars. No voices, no movement, no distractions. Just the quiet hum of existence. In that moment, something shifts. You feel smaller, yet deeply connected. Fragile, yet strangely eternal. Empty, yet unbelievably whole. This is the first spiritual layer, the layer where the soul remembers that it came from something vast, timeless, and divine. But the journey does not stop at silence. Silence opens the door, but what happens after you walk through it? Once the noise fades, the second part of this first teaching emerges. Awareness. Awareness of your breath. Awareness of your heartbeat. Awareness of the subtle sensations that remind you, I am here. I am present. I am alive. Awareness is the first form of prayer, the first bridge between the human and the divine. Many people believe prayer begins with words. But the truth may not be what you think. Prayer begins with awareness. Because awareness is the moment you realize you are being held by something greater, something that moves through you, even when you are not paying attention. This is why so many spiritual traditions teach deep breathing, meditation, grounding, and solitude. Not to escape the world, but to reconnect with the presence that has always been guiding you. One ancient teaching says, when the soul becomes quiet, God becomes visible. Not visible to the eyes, but visible to the heart. And when your heart begins to feel that presence, something extraordinary happens. The fear softens. The anxiety dissolves. The loneliness fades. Because in that stillness, you sense something watching over you. Something loving. Something profoundly aware of your existence. Could it be that God has always been speaking, but the world became too loud for us to hear? When we enter the first spiritual layer, the layer of sacred silence and awareness, our inner world begins to shift. We realize that God is not found in dramatic miracles, but in the quiet miracles we overlook every day. The breath you just took, the intuition you feel, the comfort that comes for no reason, the peace that appears without explanation. These are the subtle fingerprints of the divine. This is the first teaching, the teaching of stillness, the teaching of inner awareness, the teaching that reminds you, God is near, closer than you think. And as this layer opens, the mystery begins to deepen. Because beyond silence lies something even more sacred, something hidden, something most people never discover in their lifetime. The next layer awaits. Now that we have entered the first layer, the sacred stillness, we step deeper into a place where the soul begins to sense what cannot be seen, where the heart begins to recognize what cannot be explained. The second divine teaching is not given lightly, and it is here, in this shadowed depth, that the mystery begins to unfold. The second teaching is this: God speaks in symbols, signs, and subtle synchronicities, but we must learn to see. Have you ever experienced a moment so precise, so uncanny, that it felt as though the universe itself had paused, just for you? Perhaps it was a sudden insight, a dream that lingered, a stranger's words that touched you inexplicably. Could it be that these moments are not coincidences? Could it be that they are God's whispers, guiding, nudging, reminding? Most people dismiss these subtle signs. They label them as luck, chance, imagination. And yet, the wise have always known that the divine often does not roar in grand displays. Instead, it threads itself delicately through the patterns of life, waiting for those who are willing to notice. Imagine standing at the edge of a forest. The wind carries the scent of rain, the rustle of leaves seems almost deliberate, and a single bird calls your name in the silence. To a casual observer, it is just nature. But to the awakened soul, it is a message, a call to attention, a confirmation, a guidance. The challenge lies in learning to interpret these signs without fear, without skepticism, without the noise of the mind drowning them out. To connect with God, one must cultivate discernment. One must learn the language of subtlety. And this is where the second teaching begins, the practice of spiritual awareness, the art of noticing. But how do we notice what is hidden? How do we hear what has been there all along? It begins with intention. You must quiet the inner chatter that fills your mind and consciously open yourself to possibility. Every encounter, every emotion, every fleeting thought may hold a deeper meaning. Perhaps the phone call you didn't expect, perhaps the dream that repeated itself, perhaps the sudden rush of peace in the middle of chaos. These are not random events. These are divine breadcrumbs, laid along the path, waiting for your attention. Let's go deeper. There is also a caution here. Some signs are easy to misread. The world is filled with distractions that masquerade as guidance. And herein lies the test of spiritual maturity, distinguishing the divine signal from the noise. It is not always easy. It requires patience, humility, and the willingness to let go of certainty. Because God rarely delivers messages wrapped in loud, unmistakable commands. The messages come as whispers, fleeting impressions, nudges at the edge of awareness. Could it be that most of us walk through life surrounded by signs, yet never see them? Could it be that God has been calling all along, and we have simply been deafened by our own routines? Here, in this second layer, the soul begins to awaken to a subtle intelligence, a guiding force beyond comprehension. Dreams may take on new clarity. Intuition may sharpen. People, events, and circumstances may begin to carry a rhythm that feels oddly familiar, as if life itself is speaking in a language you are only now beginning to understand. The teachings suggest that we are always being guided, but guidance requires recognition. It requires attentiveness. It requires trust. And above all, it requires surrender, surrendering the illusion that we must control everything and opening ourselves to the unseen currents that move the universe and move us toward God. What if every coincidence you have ever ignored, every fleeting feeling dismissed, was actually a thread delicately woven by the divine, connecting you to a greater reality? What if God's presence has always been evident, yet we are only now ready to see it? The second teaching, then, is a doorway, the test, a revelation. It asks us to attune our senses, refine our perception, and begin to recognize the invisible guidance that has been present from the very beginning. And when the soul learns to see and feel these signs, the connection to God deepens. The veil begins to lift, and the mystery grows ever more profound, because beyond recognition lies transformation. And beyond transformation, the third teaching waits, ready to awaken a truth that most souls never encounter. As we move into the third phase, the journey begins to shift from awareness to experience, from noticing signs to feeling the presence of God with profound intimacy. This is the moment where the teachings no longer exist merely as ideas, but as living, breathing forces within your own soul. Here, the third divine teaching reveals itself. God is experienced in surrender, in letting go of the self and opening fully to the divine. This is a teaching that challenges everything we think we know. Because surrender is not weakness. Surrender is not giving up. It is a courageous act of trust, an acceptance that there is a force far greater than our fears, our plans, our limitations. And it is in this surrender that the heart is transformed. Imagine, for a moment, standing at the edge of a cliff. The wind bites at your face. Below, the abyss stretches endlessly. Every instinct screams to hold on, to cling to what you know, to control your fall. And yet, there is a quiet voice within, a whisper that invites you to step forward, to trust, to let go, to fall not into emptiness, but into something infinitely supportive and unseen. This is the essence of surrender. This is how God is experienced. Many spiritual seekers live their entire lives resisting this truth. They cling to control, to certainty, to comfort, and in doing so, they miss the profound intimacy of the divine. But those who dare to surrender, even in small moments, begin to glimpse a reality that is extraordinary, comforting, and unshakable. Stories throughout history echo this revelation. A monk who spent decades in silence feels the presence of God in a single, fleeting vision. A mother, exhausted and despairing, experiences a sudden clarity, a deep knowing that she is guided and protected. A traveler lost in a storm discovers a path opening before them, not through their own reasoning, but through trust in an unseen hand. Each is different, yet each points to the same truth. God is encountered where control ends and surrender begins. And it is not always a comfortable revelation. Surrender often requires facing fear, pain, and the illusions we have built around identity, success, and belonging. It asks us to release old attachments, to face the emptiness within, and to trust that the divine is more faithful than our own understanding. But in that release, the soul awakens, the heart softens, and the world transforms. Could it be that the struggles, the doubts, the moments of despair in your life were invitations to surrender? Was each challenge a divine call, urging you to step beyond yourself, beyond fear, into a deeper intimacy with God? The third teaching also carries a quiet, emotional shift, the realization that God is not only near, but active, moving in your life, orchestrating events, shaping experiences, and speaking through the very fabric of existence. And when the heart opens to surrender, every moment becomes a sacred encounter, every challenge a lesson, and every breath a dialogue with the divine. Let's go deeper. Imagine a soul journeying inward, layer by layer. With each step, the resistance softens. With each step, the subtle guidance of God becomes undeniable. With each step, the emotional weight of separation lifts, leaving only presence, trust, and profound inner peace. This teaching invites reflection. What if your life, every joy and every hardship, was a carefully woven tapestry designed to lead you to surrender? What if the deepest connection you crave with God could only emerge when you let go of your need to control, predict, or understand? Here, in this third phase, the transformation is no longer conceptual. It is felt. It is lived. It resonates in the heartbeat, the breath, the quiet moments of awe and wonder. And as the soul embraces this surrender, it becomes ready to receive the fourth divine teaching, the insight, the guidance, the wisdom that will illuminate the path ahead in ways the mind alone could never comprehend. Because the journey from awareness to surrender is where the soul truly begins to taste the divine. And from this taste, a revelation emerges that is both intimate and eternal. The next layer beckons. Having moved through stillness, awareness, and surrender, we now arrive at a place where revelation and wisdom merge. The fourth divine teaching is not merely a principle to observe. It is a profound insight that asks the soul to reflect, to awaken, and to act. God reveals truth through the choices we make, and the path of the soul depends on our willingness to live consciously. This teaching carries both a gift and a warning. The gift is clarity, the realization that every thought, every word, and every action carries spiritual weight. The warning is subtle, yet urgent. Without conscious living, the soul drifts, distracted by trivial pursuits, illusions of control, or the endless noise of the world. And in that drift, the connection to God weakens. Consider the analogy of a river. The water flows endlessly, always moving toward the ocean, yet when blocked by debris, the current slows, stagnates, and loses its vitality. Our choices are like the river's channels. When aligned with divine guidance, life flows with clarity, purpose, and peace. When misaligned, the soul stagnates, yearning for connection yet struggling to recognize it. Could it be that much of our suffering arises not from external forces, but from unconscious choices? Could it be that the divine is patient, yet persistent, nudging us toward awareness, surrender, and alignment, even when we resist? The insight here is profound. Spiritual awakening is not accidental. It is cultivated. It is nurtured through conscious attention to how we live, how we speak, and how we respond to life's challenges. Every decision is a dialogue with God, a test of alignment, a chance to either deepen connection or drift farther from it. Imagine the small acts of compassion, patience, honesty, and courage as threads weaving a luminous tapestry. Each thread carries divine resonance. Each choice ripples outward, influencing not just your own spiritual evolution, but the subtle fabric of the universe. And yet, when ignored, these threads fray, and the soul experiences distance, confusion, or despair. Let's go deeper. The fourth teaching invites the realization that God's guidance is constant, yet it rarely overrides free will. We are given the freedom to navigate, to stumble, and to rise again. The divine does not force compliance, but it does provide signs, insights, and opportunities for growth. The warning is gentle yet firm. Ignoring these opportunities may delay awakening, prolong suffering, and obscure the deeper truths waiting to be revealed. In practical terms, this teaching asks you to examine your life. Where are you living unconsciously? Where are patterns repeating? Where is fear or ego steering decisions, rather than the subtle whispers of the soul? Awareness of these patterns is the first step toward realignment, and alignment is the bridge to intimacy with the divine. This layer also emphasizes responsibility, not in a punitive sense, but in a sacred one. God does not coerce. God invites. God mirrors the choices we make, reflecting back the truth of where we stand spiritually. Every act, every thought, every intention is a chance to either awaken further or remain asleep. Could it be that your greatest challenges, disappointments, and trials are not punishments, but divine lessons, carefully tailored to awaken insight, humility, and alignment? Could it be that every soul is offered these opportunities, and it is our response that determines the depth of our connection? The fourth teaching, then, is both a gift and a gentle admonition: to live consciously, to recognize the subtle guidance, and to understand that the divine is woven into every moment. The path to God is illuminated not only by insight and surrender, but by the intentionality of living, a reminder that connection with the divine is both a privilege and a responsibility. As this layer settles, the soul begins to see a new horizon, one of integration, understanding, and deep spiritual resonance. And from here, we approach the final contemplation, the reflective conclusion that invites the soul to embrace the entirety of this journey. As we reach the close of this journey, it is time to pause and reflect. 7 divine teachings have unfolded before us, the path from stillness to awareness, from surrender to conscious living. Each layer has whispered its secrets, each step has invited you to awaken, and each insight has pointed to the same eternal truth: God is nearer than you think, and the soul has always known the way. Take a moment and breathe. Feel the rhythm of your own heart. Sense the quiet presence within, the subtle awareness that has been guiding you long before you sought answers. This is the divine calling you home. It is gentle, persistent, and profoundly patient. Have you noticed how life itself carries these teachings? The small miracles you encounter each day, the unexpected moments of clarity, the challenges that quietly shape your growth, all are invitations to reconnect, to remember, to awaken. And it is here, in this reflection, that the soul recognizes its own sacred nature. But what does this truly mean for you? Perhaps it is a reminder to slow down, to listen more deeply, to surrender with courage, and to live intentionally. Perhaps it is a call to trust in the unseen currents guiding your life, even when the path feels uncertain. Perhaps it is an urging to recognize the signs, embrace the stillness, and honor the sacred within and around you. The journey does not end here. It is not a destination to arrive at, but a living, breathing experience to engage with every day. Each moment offers a chance to practice these teachings, to connect, to reflect, and to allow the divine to move through you. There is more to uncover. There is more to awaken. And if you are ready to continue this journey, to explore the depths of your own soul, to witness the subtle guidance of God, and to embrace the mysteries that stretch beyond comprehension, then the path is already opening before you. So pause, reflect, and ask yourself, am I listening? Am I ready to let the divine speak? The answer lies quietly within. And in that quiet, the soul remembers its eternal connection, its timeless journey, and the presence that has never left. Take this reflection with you, carry it into your days, and let it illuminate the space between heartbeats. Because the divine is not far. The divine is here, and the journey has only just begun.